Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashtarothi, and it is still the Friday Eve Universe show. And if you don't get that joke, then you should watch it live on Twitch. But to the YouTube audience, welcome. And we are going to be jumping straight into our interview with the good Dr. Jurius Doctor for CSM 16. And let us begin by saying, hey, Jurius, how you doing?
Hey, everybody, I'm Jurius Doctor, and thanks, Ashtarothi, for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Excellent. All right. And of course, this is the standard CSM 16 interview, so it follows the same rules as all of the others. So I will have 50 minutes to discuss anything that I can or want to with you on the topic of your CSM 16 campaign post. And I also will disclose everything that I know about you or like previous relationships that we have. And obviously, you and I have actually talked quite a few times on the Talking in Stations Discord and elsewhere. I have been a fan of your work for quite some time, and I believe that you have as well.
Feeling is definitely mutual.
Awesome. All right. So with all that said, let's just jump into this. And let's start with like you. I think actually probably of all of the CSM. Well, first of all, have you ran for CSM before? Or is this your first time running? Let's start there.
I have run for the last 4 years, and last year I got farther than I ever have. I ended up in 13th place, and it was actually a really tight battle for those last, that last place in 10th. And as I recall, it was really, really tight, like down to single digits as to who got in.
Oh, well, so close that you can taste it, right?
Well, I'm going to keep running until they let me in, just because that's who I am.
Okay, right. And then so you've been running for 4 years. How long? And then, but you are mostly known for your YouTube channel, which is pretty successful at this point, correct?
Yeah, actually, not last year, the year before. So Christmas 2019, I hit 5,000 subscribers, and probably by the end of this month, I'll be at 9.
Excellent, excellent. And I've checked out your YouTube channel, and it does have quite a variety of stuff. Your main focus is on actually training new bros, and the thing I like about your take in particular is that whereas a lot of people try to like make a tutorial video, they often make that tutorial video from the perspective of like an experienced player, whereas often a newer player may actually have totally different considerations or, a different lexicon. Whereas your tutorial really does seem to, you've spent a lot of time, just like I have, making sure that you understand the new bro perspective, not just what you want the new bros to learn. Would that be fair?
And like I taught with Eve University for a few years and got to be good friends with several members, including the recently retired head of Eve University, Laura Karpinski. And I'm actually kind of disappointed she didn't run for CSM, but her real life is extremely busy, just like mine, but she's not as crazy as I am. And part of the whole teaching experience was I realized that I really loved the understanding of pedagogy and understanding how people learn, because I've struggled with that all my life. I have ADHD, and part of being able to see the struggles that I ran into, I realized in talking with new bros day in and day out that there were very common sticking points. And so I tried to make a YouTube format where I could give them visual content on screen, I could give them me speaking through the content, and I could give them real examples of how it applies in layman's terms with none of the bitter vet jargon and none of the context that kind of gets built into your knowledge base as you play the game for several years. It's really hard when you're teaching people to remember, what was it like for me in my first week? Like when I knew nothing, when I had not a single clue in my head about how to do these things. Like, what is warp? What's the overview? How do you make content so that people begin to intuit that stuff and build up a body of knowledge and build up a lexicon?
Okay, so all of that's really exciting, but you just like dropped the word and then walked past it like everyone knew it, and I'm going to need you to back up and define that. The
pedagogy is the understanding of the study of teaching. It's
Okay.
It's how you communicate knowledge to other people. And unfortunately, the school system we have now relies on the same idea that's been around since literally 2500 BC. Somebody walks around at the front of a room and talks, and you're just expected to somehow suck that knowledge through your skull and into your brain and hold it there.
Right. So and so this is something that you're into outside of Eve as well, it seems.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
and in my day job, where and I'm not worried about being doxing because I give out my LinkedIn profile. I work as a server tech, and a lot of what I do as a senior tech is teaching junior techs and teaching other people the knowledge that I have. And a lot of that is walking them through it, whether we're doing a screen share or we're using remote tools to access the same computer, or I'm helping them to troubleshoot something. So this is literally all I do all day long.
Okay. Well, I mean, I can definitely see why that would make you uh, a compelling argument to have you on the CSM, especially during this time where obviously Aura has just gone through another major revamp. The new player experience has gone through major revamp, but the CCP has very clearly indicated that they want to go to the next step beyond that. If that's career agents, if it's missions, if it's whatever that is something that they're exploring over the next several months. And so, that would be a really good opportunity to have a CSM representative that understands how things get taught. And really, anytime new features are being brought in, one of the things that CCP has struggled with, I think, the most has been communicating their features, teaching players how to do stuff, and making Eve into a learnable game. And there's a very variety of reasons for that, but at this point, I feel like that is really holding the game back, and CCP, I feel, agrees, and they're struggling but working to get better at it. But having somebody like you would be very, very, very valuable, I believe.
This might be a good segue into my writing with INN, but I'm going to use it early anyways, even if you
Sure
need to hold
thing.
off
No,
on that
go for
thought.
it.
So a lot of the things that they've been doing lately are things that I and other teachers in the game, be it members of Karma Fleet or, Brave Newbies or, Bombers Bar and other groups have approached them and said, these are things that, you should be doing that we already do that would help you to help us with retention. And they've in honestly just like the last 3 weeks, it's been amazing the pace of development. They've really been pushing on this, especially since they've hired new data analysts and new community analysts, is putting up essentially a new version of their old wiki. So the old Eve universe kind of sites where you would have landing pages to talk about what is faction warfare, what is
Right.
corporations, all those different things. I think the page was actually just launched today, and you look at they had the flight center videos and they've made it part of this new website, but it used to be in game that you would press F12 to bring up the help menu where you can submit tickets and you can look at the details of past service requests and those kinds of things. And it used to be that there was a tab on it that had videos, and you could click it and you could watch all of the videos, like the 4-part series on how to do PI. I used to refer a lot of people to those videos. They've actually taken that out. I don't know if they've put it back in with the release of the site, but I see year over year that CCP has a habit of killing its own best decisions because either they don't have enough data about why that was a successful tactic, or they saw the data and they didn't interpret its usefulness. So the new Eve Academy site is a really good move, but there's also some things there that, you know, I've been really critical of CCP lately in my Eve articles for INN. I don't want to seem like somebody who's constantly taking the boots to CCP because I love everything they're doing, but there's a lot of opportunity for them to massage how they're delivering it. And this is where I really, really want to help because this is something I'm very good at, is recruiting people to this game. At least if my recruiter friend program is any indication.
Have you gotten your marshal yet? I'm sure. How many
Oh yeah,
marshals
a
have you gotten?
couple times over at least.
Awesome, awesome. So for those you don't know, you have to have, I think, 40 people use your buddy code and then proceed to pay for Omega on that character, and
Yeah,
they give you a marshal BPC.
it goes really well for me, and I'm sure it's true for you as well because a lot of people watch your stream. But like pretty much once a week, I get between 4 and 8 of those cerebral accelerators that you get every time somebody buys Plex.
Yeah, every time I never quite run out. I always like every time I get low, another 4 appears in my redemption window, and I'm like, oh, okay, chew. Nom 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 nom. Anywho, okay, so And that is, we can talk more about it outside of the CSM interview, or I mean, I guess we could talk about spend your CSM interview talking about how great the Eve Academy page is. But really, you want to focus on the fact that um, this is a great example of the kind of thing that you want to help work with CCP developing, correct?
Absolutely. And on that point, one of the big things that's in my campaign post is the fact that I think we really, more than anything else, need to touch recruitment and corporation tools in the game, like, desperately. And I'll give you a really, really short, condensed timeline. So Corpse came into the game really early on. It was in the Exodus release in 2004. And corporations were cool. It was a new way to get people to be able to share assets and, own structures and those kinds of things. It wasn't touched for another 4 years, and it was really just minor changes when FAC War came into the game in Empyrean Age in 2008. And really, other than some minor balance passes and a couple of changes with mechanics, FAC War really hasn't been touched in a significant way since 2008. So that's something that I care a lot about, because it's a community that's been ignored. But
That's not
corporation,
technically true, but sure. I mean, there's a major revamp in Inferno in the Inferno
yes,
update.
in Inferno, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the same year, 2008, the only touch corporations had in 2008 in a significant way was that they added medals. And I know Eve University and a couple of other small groups use medals and decorations in the game still, but the number of people who actually use medals, I think I can count on one hand and not use all the fingers.
Yeah, we do. I think it's a kind of cool thing, but it's funny. It is actually another one of those things that could be really cool, but there's a couple of small things that are holding it back, for sure.
Yes, and it's a good tool that, with a little massaging and the community engaging with it, would be really, really helpful for new players, because everybody wants a gold star. Everybody wants
Mm-hmm.
to, like, even looking at martial arts, which I studied for many years. There's this idea that the belt system or colored system has been adopted just to help you understand where you are in your progression to being somebody who has a clue. And medals can be really useful for that, but I don't see anybody using them for that purpose. And it's one small tool, and it's there already. It's something that the developers already
Right.
have in the game. And it's
So
those things that sometimes you don't need a whole new feature. All you need is to have them change a feature or give you an extra step with it.
it's funny that you talk about this because, like, I think just yesterday, I was talking with one of my officers because we had somebody, go above and beyond this month and help out and donate some stuff for fuel and stuff, and we wanted to reward them. He's like, "What can I do?" And the problem is that, like, if somebody's that rich or whatever, you can't just throw ISK at them. I was like, you can give him a medal or a skin, and we ended up giving him a medal, and that was meaningful to him. It was like a commendation medal, and I made the comment that this is the one thing that us as a corporation can provide to our membership that nobody else can. We can give them a medal, and then they can show it off. And the other piece to it that I really, really like is, like, one of the things I'd really like to do is set a standard for certain medals, so that way people could, for instance, join the convocation, perform certain, like, almost like merit badges, right? Like, if you go through a certain training, rep through, pull Logi through a world arc, and some other stuff, then you get the Logi certification badge. And the idea would be that our group, as a training organization, could actually give people certification through these medals, right? We can say,
I'm gonna push that one step farther
sure.
and say that one of the things that Ubisoft and other developers have done really well is the whole completionist instinct in us as human beings, the whole achievement unlocked thing. It would be really, really easy for CCP to tie the activity tracker into the
Oh,
medal
yeah.
system and set up a series of ranked medals that say when you complete these things, you get a little badge shows up in your profile.
Oh, absolutely. No, no, no. I strongly agree. Well, I actually think that they need a more robust achievement system altogether, but I think that using the medal system for that would be really good too. But yeah, I think that it would be nice for, like, a group to be able to do that as well. But it is a pretty, like, honestly, I don't know how much of that is like CCP needs to do something, or how much of it is like we as an organization need to, like, get our act together in order to actually create that standard and enforce it and, like, be able to
Well,
present
and
those medals. But
that's actually something that was, I think, I don't know if it put people off of me, because I haven't actually, polled anybody to see how I performed last year and what turned people off. But one of the things I've said for the last couple of years, and I still feel this way, is that most of the problems with retention in this game are due to the fact that we as a community have some cultural problems we need to address to really be able to take this game from keeping 50,000 people a year to keeping a million.
Oh, I agree, and I think that I I personally believe that CCP is on the precipice of trying to do that with the shooter, with these revamps, with this all of this focus that we see. It really seems like CCP is now that we're 2 years past the line of being purchased by Pearl Abyss. That's about that's a development time, right? Like that's how long it takes to get things fully calibrated and locked in. And so it really does seem like they may have a pretty big gambit going forward, which would make, which seems pretty exciting to me.
Yeah, it's interesting because Eve and Black Desert Online
Mm-hmm.
are kind of in some ways two sides of the same coin. One, however, has really, really sticky loyalty, which is
Right.
Eve. It's got a very tight, very dedicated, highly polarized group of players that are deeply invested in it. And it's not just the sunk cost fallacy where they're like, I can't quit because I've spent so much time and money on it. It's they're absolutely sucked into the community, the culture, the game, the shakes that you get from sneaking up on a battleship in a stealth bomber. Like, it's everything.
Yeah, it's
It's
not a
all
game
of that.
anymore. It is a hobby. It is their pastime. You know, the idea of quitting Eve, like even stopping playing Eve, doesn't quit Eve for many
Eve
people.
is the Hotel California. You'd
Right.
never really leave.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Like in a lot of ways, Black Desert Online has a bigger population and is the popular one, but Eve is far more the functional one of the two, like of an actual game and player base and whatnot. I believe, and I think that
Yeah, and
I think that
I
Pearl
think that's
Abyss
part of why they
recognizes
bought
that.
it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree.
I think that was part of their strategy in buying, was because they wanted to understand they have, especially in Korea, they have a community that is, in many ways, like the Japanese, very communalist, and they're very good at cooperating and building big things and doing amazing stuff. If you've ever seen what the Korean community has done with building stuff in the like real world models in Minecraft, oh my god, it blows my mind watching what those guys have done. It's amazing the feats that they're able to pull off. um, I would love to see that kind of expansive growth in Eve Online, but it's also one of those things where there's a lot of people who I'm sure right now are cringing that I've said that and gone, oh my God, can you imagine having to try to onboard that many new bros into a game where organizations in Eve culturally are resistant to change and don't like scale?
I mean, it'd be a shit show, and I would love it every minute of it, man. Are you
Oh, it'd
serious?
be
Like,
organized chaos, and I love it.
yeah, like, why, yeah, why wouldn't you want that kind of thing? So, okay, all right, you've ran for 4 years already. What do you think? You just said you haven't really pulled them, but like, what makes it? I guess let me ask you this way: what makes you keep going? Why do you keep why keep running if people don't want you?
I mean, okay, this is going to sound a little bit conceited, maybe a little bit of tooting my own horn, but when Ben, CCP Lebowski, got up on stage in Toronto in 2018 and thanked me for my contributions to making the UI pointer tool and helping them translate that into something that they could actually do by the side of the desk. Like, I love the CCP team. The thing that keeps me going is that I want more FaceTime with the devs. That is the number one thing I want. Is sitting in meetings. I mean, that's more than 50% of my job full
Right.
time. I'm somebody who's professional, concise, eloquent, speaks well, knows how to stick to an agenda, and keep meetings gloriously simple and short. For the other CSM members, I think they'll benefit from my experience in those ways, and the fact that I work in IT. I have led teams developing software. I'm a former DevOps manager, and I've been a project manager. So for me, like, the meetings part of the job, the hundreds of hours a year of commitment, the stuff that, seeing how the sausage is made drives a lot of ex CSM members away from the game, to me is Tuesday. Like, it's really not, it's not something that's going to bother me. I already know how the sausage is made. For me, it's the opportunity to be a bridge between seeing the things that I see that the new players experience as hurdles, and that experienced players um, feel like a rock in their shoe that's been there for 18 years, where it's like they just can't move that pebble between their toes enough that it doesn't bother them. And when it's in the worst place, they're screaming for everything to just end, because it's like you can't put up with it anymore. Um, Being able to condense those pain points down into, this isn't something you need to throw 10 people and 2 months of development time at. This is something you can fix with half an hour and these small changes. And sometimes it really is that simple, but it's hard to articulate that in a way that's actionable.
Okay, so I want to circle back on something because you alluded to something, and I want to make sure to touch on it again. For those of you who don't know, there's this trick, right? In whenever anybody asks me, "Where's X UI element?" Right? Where's the fleet? Where's fleets again? Where's the market again? Where's contracts again? I always tell them, okay, open up your Neocom, go all the way down to utilities, go to the all the way down to the bottom to the pointer window. All right, this is a searchable indexed of every single UI element basically in the game that can be linked. And if you click on it, it'll highlight that element in the UI if it's available. And so I teach a man to fish, instead of giving a man a fish when they ask me these kinds of things. You're saying that you're responsible for this.
Well, lots of people had posited the idea before, but it was at eVegas 2018 when there was the small things panel where there was a bunch of series of requests being asked, and some of the great ideas that came out of that conversation from several members of the community were things like updating the holograms on gates and on structures so that they show whether or not the structure is occupied or manned, those kinds of things that have all made their way into the game. They're all great suggestions, and several people have recommended to CCP, how can you give me something to show people where things are? But that's a nebulous ask.
Right.
What I said was, can you give me a tool like the instruction tools I use when I'm running a remote client to access somebody's computer as a technician? Can you give me something using the existing assets from the new player experience, the little blue windows that pop up,
Right.
that I can trigger from my side that will point to the person on their UI on the other side where that thing is, regardless of where they've moved it. So even though I, since day one of playing this game, always keep my overview and selected items in the top right corner, I never move them. That doesn't mean that somebody who is left-handed isn't going to move the overview to the left side of their screen. And if I say go to the right top side of your screen and click the hamburger menu, if I say hamburger menu and they don't know what that means, they don't know what I'm referring to, it gets really hard to point those things out. Whereas if you give me a tool that I can click and make a blue speech button pop up with a little arrow, that's all I need. And CSP Carker went, huh, and immediately started taking notes.
Yep.
And then about 5 months after eVegas, she reached out to me with a preview of it and was like, here, can you take a look at this and tell me what you think? And then we'll put it up in the forums. And I was like, cool. And I loved it. Like even the beta version she showed me was something that I think Eve University has been asking or waiting for and hoping for 12 years. And then it came out and it was wonderful.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Everybody was able to show NC dot where the undock button was. It was awesome.
So sometimes it's not that people haven't asked for it before. It's how do you tell a developer how to put pieces together that they already have so that it makes something that's useful?
Yeah, knowing how to problem solve using the tools that developers often have, knowing how development processes happen, knowing what kind of asks are high risk versus low risk is the kind of thing that people that have IT development kind of instinctively pick up over time. That, because I see this all the time where like a person on a forum will be like, oh, it's easy, just do this. And I like read it. I'm like, oh my God, you would never, that's not going to happen. But like, so, you can say like, oh, wait, there's already this element that points to certain things in the UI. It can happen on triggers. Is there any way I can make it so that I can make a trigger to a link? Like, that's really all you asked. And a UI that lets you get all of those links.
So I don't remember if it was, there was a German stream recently with RSB, and it was a panel where there was several of us, including Brisk, Tidor, Oren Bordor, and Isaac Collins, who unfortunately are no longer running. And I don't remember if it was Isaac or Tidor who recommended this, but they had the really good idea. I think it was Isaac who had the really good idea of how do we build on mentorship in the new player experience beyond just the newbie help chat? And he suggested, what do you think of the idea of an optional flag, like an icon that you can have appear next to your name that says, I am a brand new Nubro. This is a character that has existed less than 90 days on a new account that just shows up and says, I am a Nubro, that you can optionally turn off or turn on. And conversely, as an experienced player with a character over 90 days on an established account, having the option to check a box that says, I'm a mentor, and have that mentor icon show up and be able to say, like in a safe way, broadcast that you are a mentor, that new bros can approach you and message you in local and you will help them. And I'm like, that is great on two fronts. One, I'm going to throw that thing on instantly. Two, I'm going to have all my alts pretend to be new bros because I want to catch the griefers that are hunting new bros.
I also think that it'd be cool if there was some sort of like endorsement system, so that way if you're a mentor, then people can like confirm that. And then if anybody
Yeah.
gets caught in abusing that, and you just undo their vote up and kick them out.
Yeah, and it's like the sprout system from Final Fantasy 15 or 14 that Valamir's talking about in chat, and I think that's a great analogy. And the thing with that is that that's not hard, but for a lot of new players, they find, and this is true, and I will back this up and say that I've definitely experienced this myself. The Nubro help chats, there are two of them. The one you can only get into if you're a Nubro or you have the direct link, or the one that everybody can publicly access. And both of them have a huge problem with toxicity from bitter vets. And that's a real problem because that is the first place a lot of players go for help. And if you have bad actors in there, the whole process from there on is a turnoff for a lot of people, and they'll just stop playing the game right then and there. And that is a community problem. That is not something CCP can fix with game development or new features or language filters or anything like that. That's not something they can programmatically fix. That's something we, the players, have to take on and say, cut that shit out.
That's true. I agree. And I mean, this is also true in other places, like even Reddit. Even though people are terrified of that idea, I mean, ultimately, people do go to those locations in order to find stuff. And if people aren't there helping them out, then all that's left are the shit heels, and all the new bros go straight to them, and that isn't a great place to be. So, but I think that what I'm really picking up out of all of this is that, like, in contrast to, I had an interview with Rick Javix, and I think I went into this with a couple of CSM candidates so far, but it's that question of like, why do you need a slot on the CSM? You clearly have the ear of CCP already, right? Like, I mean, you literally have a feature that you can say that you helped create, and a lot of CSM members don't have that, even after a year or multiple years of being on the CSM. So, clearly you have the ability to communicate your interests to CCP. Wouldn't it be more valuable to have someone else be able to communicate their interests that may not have that path? That is what I asked to a lot of other people. But what I'm really hearing from you is that you know that you have all of that access. That isn't why you want to be on the CSM. You want to be on the CSM legitimately because you want to make the CSM more functional. You want to help the
100%.
CSM. And I
And
think that
more
that's a
than that,
really commendable position to have.
it's more than that though too. There's a lot of things, especially in the last 3 weeks, which I cannot give CCP enough credit. Like in the last 3 years, we've seen more development than in the first 15 years combined. Like
That's
the
true.
development pace has just picked up insanely. It's like being on the Autobahn in the slow lane and watching Lambos zip past you. Like that's what this feels like in terms of change. And I've been playing a long time now, and a lot of people are like, well, I'm old, I'm bitter vet, I don't like change. And they're a little grumpy about this pace of development. But to me, there's never been a more exciting time to be playing Eve. And even though I can point to a lot of stuff that they're doing now that I've been saying very publicly and openly for a long time, these are good ideas. I am ecstatic that CCP is just doing them and hasn't consulted me at all about any of these recent changes. Like, I have not had a lot of FaceTime with the devs. And while they may be listening to some of the better ideas out there, many of which I have recommended, as have others, I don't point to that and go, yeah, that was me. No, that's their work.
Sure.
They're doing it. They're listening. They're doing good things. And as much as I will be critical of CCP in articles when I'm writing for INN, I love them. Like, I think of them as that extended family that I wish I grew up in. And when I look at the CSM, I look at a bunch of players who feel the same way on some level as I do, or who want to be heard by the people who have the ability to make their lives better. And for me, that's, having be able to say, yeah, I did a thing. Who cares? That's like, you do stuff at work all the time. Do you expect somebody to give you a cookie because you did your job? Like, that's not why I'm running.
Sure. So let's get cynical for a second, because a lot of people think that the CSM like is somewhere between impotent and a machinations of the null blocks in order to control CCP with some sort of power over their head. You're saying that you want to step into that and straighten things out. First of all, uh, how do you feel about the CSM and and how it's been functioning without you for the last 4 years? And do you feel that you actually will be able to work with the rest of the CSM once elected?
Yeah, actually, when it comes to working with the other members of the CSM, absolutely. In fact, if you look at my forum post, several current and former CSM members have, commented on my profile or commended me there, saying that they think I would be very good as a member of the CSM, that I would be a very driven, respectable, and cooperative member of the CSM. And that's something that is, if you ask Villy, if you ask Brisk, if you talk to anybody who's currently on there right now, if you talk to Phantomite, Kenneth, anyone, and you ask them, have there been moments in the CSM where somebody gets hung up on a single topic or can't talk to the topic that the meeting's actually about, and they monopolize 45 minutes of airtime because they're a one party candidate who's just hung up on that one dead horse they want to beat? um, yeah, that's very disruptive. It's very damaging to the CSM environment and to the engagement and to the role they're expected to fill as a focus group for CCP. How do I think they've been doing without me? Fine. That's, again, not why I'm running. I don't think that they're doing a bad job. I think that they've had struggles that they wouldn't have had if I had been there to help maybe calm the waters, or to help them be more effective, or to help systematize some of the ways that they work with the community. I think the CSM itself, as a body of people, needs some development, and I think they need more trust from CCP. One of the things that I asked for in my post is that I feel that CSM should entrust, or CCP should entrust the CSM with the capacity to run their own internalized focus groups with the players. So, like CCP turns to the CSM, I want the CSM to be able to turn to the players and have an actual formal feedback path to test the waters on ideas and go back to CCP, rather than just CCP saying, hey, these are the ideas we've had. We show them to you. You tell us if they're good or bad. I want CCP to open a channel of, okay, for limited time, we're going to let you tell us what's a good idea, but it's all got to get filtered through the CSM.
Well, I mean, I've seen CSM members do their own forms of um, focus groups or whatever before. But I understand, like, there always has been kind of this push pull of like the CSM wanting to be taken seriously, battles over what the white paper was and all that sort of stuff. And then of course there were a few unfortunate events, that kind of undermined some of that a few years back. But it is very true that the CSM is, and always kind of has been, an institution looking for its definition, right? Like, and I think that each CSM kind of both defines itself and helps define the legacy of the CSM. And that's why when people talk about, like, oh, the CSM is useless, or the CSM, or whatever, not don't any statement that discourages against voting in the CSM or participating in the CSM, all I hear is attempting to suppress that, the play styles that would listen to that kind of, to their thing. When the null blocks say it, they're hoping that the non-null blocks won't vote, so that way their votes are worth more, because that's really what it's all about, right? And so the more we believe in the system, the better off it's going to be. You believe in the system. That was kind of a trick question for you, to being all cynical about it, but it's
Well,
a
I
good.
mean, I think in a big way too, a lot of people look at this and they're like, well, I want to have a wormhole candidate, a LOSIC candidate. We want to have all these candidates. And it's like, okay, fair. That's perfectly reasonable. And people will say, well, we look at your kill board, or we look at your experience and who you fly with. And I fly with Nullsec and Echelupin. I live in Nullsec. And yet I'm teaching new bros, and a lot of that engagement is about HiSec or other regions of space than where I myself currently live. And the point there is that I can speak to literally every game mechanic. And while I don't live in wormhole space, or I don't live in Poshvin, I can talk to those things. And yes, there should be specialists who have knowledge about those areas. That's one of the reasons I like Maldavius, is that you should have that representation in front of CCP if you want those concerns heard with passion and with understanding of those mechanics and the problems that they're facing. But do you need to have representation of each individual playstyle on the CSM? No. In fact, that confuses the purpose and the role of the CSM, which is not to take your ideas to CCP and bludgeon them with them. It's to act as a focus group. And really, in a concentrated way, the biggest purpose of the CSM is to stop CCP's craziest harebrained schemes, like the game-breaking, awful decisions, the stuff that would make EVE Online go Star Wars Galaxies. That's the stuff they're trying to stop. And at the end of the day, when bad ideas come in from CCP, the only thing that the CSM really needs to do is form a consensus and not budge.
Right. So I do want to check this out. You have a note here that you wanted like a Civlopedia added to the game. I've said this many times that I would like to replace the agency with Aura, and then also fold in the show info and other things like mechanic explanations, tracking, damage types, etc., into there, such that Aura, your shipboard computer, becomes your one-stop shop for content, information, and learning of the game. Is that the kind of thing that you'd be looking for?
I actually want to go a step farther. I want regular content drips in the form of teaching. So let's say you go to a Poshfen gate and it says, a blocked gate or whatever they're called in space. So you go to a Poshfen gate and you try to jump it, and you've tried clicking on it 3 or 4 times. After 2
Yes.
minutes, if you're still trying to click on that Poshfen gate to go through, or I should prompt you and say, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Dave, I can't let you do that. You don't have Triglavian standings. Here's an article on how you can raise your Triglavian standings. And there should be the opportunity for regular content helpers, in the sense that, if you're a new bro or you're a newer account, and you can set thresholds for how long that person's been playing, what they've done through their activity tracker. There's ways to tie it in and set your triggers. But basically, you should be able to say to somebody, you've been orbiting this rat for
Right.
5 minutes. You're not destroying it. You have autocannon, or not autocannons, you got artillery, and you're going too fast. Your tracking can't keep up
Right.
because your ship is physically moving too fast. Reduce your velocity.
Yeah, in game development, I think this is called putting bumpers around the tutorial, right? So the idea is that like
100%.
you let the person go forward, but you automatically detect mistakes, common mistakes, and then ease them back into the correct one. The example that I often use is in the advanced military tutorial. There's a mission that asks you to web the person, and this actually happened to me. I've been with a person because I just popped into a new bro stream and he was doing the mission already, so I didn't have any context. I even like went there and we shot at it for like 15 minutes. It didn't die. And then I was like, look at the description, and he saw it and he just had to web it and he finished it or whatever. So in that case, if you're sitting there dealing with it for more than a few seconds, it should prompt you, because like you can always say you should have read the text, but the God honest truth is a lot of people don't. And when it comes to tutorials and that kind of stuff, you can say
Oh,
that the
that
player
doesn't
should have
even
done something better, but you're the one that lost the player.
that doesn't even need to be a technical thing. It just means a small change in the interface. And an example I'll give you: radial velocity and understanding turret speed
Yes, is a hidden
can be
feature. It's a
hidden feature,
hidden feature.
but can be reduced to a model. And I'm going to pull an example. You may get it, you may not. Have you ever played Stardew Valley?
I have.
Have you played the fishing game in Stardew Valley?
Yes. Yep.
Radial velocity and turret tracking is the fishing game from Stardew Valley.
In a lot of ways, yeah. And actually, I remember I've talked to CCP Burger about this before, and I likened it to like a bubble, where you could like a level, so you have to like keep the bubble in the center.
Exactly. Yes, you have to be able to keep this red line inside this range, and there's ways that so you could have that be like an arc, or like those golf games where you have to press the button right when the red dot is inside the right swing or optimal range of the swing, and it keeps going back and forth. So it's like that, where, if you find that you're way at the top end of that line, you're going too fast, or you need a web to slow them down.
Right.
So slowing down moves that red line into the optimal zone in terms of your tracking will overcome their speed. And that's where you start, adjusting for transversal. And just a simple visual cue like that, like your bubble idea, would help players to have a better understanding of how the mechanics work without having to go to an Eve Uni article that actually has the algebra broken out
Right.
as a fractional formula.
Absolutely. And by the way, the bubble idea also extended because it came from the missiles, because, explosion velocity and explosion radius. So you have a circle which
And
represents
speed.
your explosion, the explosion velocity. And then you have like the track, which represents the speed, the velocity. And so then you have the signature radius of the target against the bubble. So if it's bigger than the containing circle, then that means its signature radius is bigger than your explosion velocity. You do full damage. And then as it
Yeah.
moves faster, it would move it off center, and therefore more of it would come out of the center bubble, representing more of your damage being lost to the missile.
Yeah, and the way that I describe missile velocities and signature is, imagine you have a ping pong ball. They're light, they're plastic, they're not very big. You can't throw them very far because they don't have a lot of mass to them. And then you have a beach ball. So what you do is you stand in your backyard or out in a park, and you have somebody hold a beach ball and stand 10 feet away from you and throw it from left to right in front of you, and you try to hit the beach ball with the ping pong ball. It's actually really easy because the beach ball is a big target. That's large signature radius. Now imagine the thing that you have is the beach ball, and they're throwing the ping pong ball, and you're trying to hit the ping pong ball with the beach ball. That's explosion radius on a small target.
That makes sense too. I like that. Although would make a much more out of place UI element, I think.
Right. But I mean, these are examples. And because I spend so much time trying to land where people are at when they're learning the game and trying to find creative and unique analogies to help them intuit and internalize how the game mechanics work, I actually have to be extremely conversant with all of the game mechanics in this game. It doesn't mean I have to be very good at solo PvP. I can be a crap PvPer in solo PvP. If I wanted somebody to go learn solo PvP, I'd say, go to Setonia or Kellen Darklight. Like, there are guys who are really, really good at solo PvP that I'll send you to. But if you want to understand the mechanics and understand why and how it works, I can teach it to you because that's where I live in my head. That's where I spend my time understanding and learning the game. And I'm hoping that my 2-year-old daughter who just ran by me will someday learn to play the game. And I'm, as it is right now, trying to get my 19-year-old into playing the game.
Yeah. I have always had a lot of difficulty getting real life people to try out my internet spaceship game, but good luck to you. But okay, so actually, let me ask you this: what came first, the YouTube show or the CSM running?
Oh, good question. I started my YouTube channel in 2016 to 2014. I'll have to go back and look. No, 2016. It was 2016. And I think I first ran for CSM the following year. So I think the YouTube channel came first.
Okay, because I know a lot of people like start YouTube channels, especially people that will run for multiple years. They'll. I remember what's his name, Gesture. Justice Shrek, the robo blogger, like one of the most prolific bloggers in EVE
Yes.
history, literally started his blog because he lost CSM, or he wanted to get on the CSM, so he lost the first year, kept on blogging the whole rest of the year, and by the time the next year rolled around, he was popular enough to get elected, or well known enough, or whatever, well established enough, whatever you want to call it. So you got 13 last time. How many are there total?
There was 46, I think, last year, and I was 13th.
And how many people get in?
10.
And then two other people. So you were like literally like next in line for the crown
Well,
most of the year.
okay, so here's the thing. I looked at my YouTube analytics the other day just because I was curious.
Mm-hmm.
I don't spend a lot of time looking at it. I'm not one of those YouTubers who's, you know, petrified at the idea of losing subs or viewership going down or any of that thing. And honestly, I don't make any money
I feel
really from
attacked.
my
It's
YouTube
okay.
channel. I make like $100 a month or something from YouTube. It's not a big deal.
Yeah,
It's not what I make my living doing.
for sure.
And when I looked at the analytics, and yes, everybody does get into that phase where all they do is stare at it. I looked at the number of views on my best months compared to the number of subscribers that I gained, and I have like 9 or 10 times as many people who watch my content and regularly watch my content and like return from the same IPs as I have subscribers. And I'm at almost 9,000 subscribers, which I'm really happy about because I love the community building part of being able to contribute to people's experiences playing the game. And even those rare moments where somebody will pop into my comments and they'll be like, I'm a bitter vet and I didn't know you could do that. And I've been playing this game since 2003. Like those kinds of comments really, they light up a little light inside me. Like it makes me really, really joyous to hear those comments.
And Eve is really good
And
about that because there's a lot of little nuanced things. So there's always some sort of trick or thing that you can throw in there for sure.
and I love that. But when I looked at that, I thought to myself, if every person who subscribes to my YouTube content plays Eve, which most of them I'm sure don't. I'm sure there's a lot of people on breaks or they had kids or their work got busy. We have a whole bunch of reasons for leaving the game and coming back later. But if everybody did have just one character and every person voted for me, I would have the highest number of votes. I would be in first place. Like it would be a given, but I can't depend on that. And so I have to, try to speak to every member of the community. I have to be able to stand in front of wormholers and say, if you guys don't end up with a dedicated, candidate, feel free to talk to me. I'm not, some of the stuff you might be talking about might go over my head. I don't exactly understand the dynamic in evictions right now. I know that a lot of people are really upset with Hard Knocks, and I can see a lot of those problems. But because I don't live in wormholes full time, I understand the mechanics. I understand why roaching fleets are a problem. Like that was something that Oren Border was bringing up that was a big problem, and I definitely agree. It's a license to print money. It's definitely something that he's balancing. But because there's also an advantage to not being a wormholer, which is that wormholers are highly polarized and highly divided, and they can't seem to sit down together and elect one person, because no matter who you pick in the wormholer community, everybody else is going to hate that person because they are so polarized and so divided. So I think one of the things that's prevented them from having a dedicated seat in CSM is the community themselves. And they tried doing it where they got together a little while ago and they picked somebody and that person flipped sides. And it felt like a huge betrayal.
There actually was several years in a row in which they did have basically wormhole primaries and have a wormhole candidate, and it did work out. Like there was actually some time that wormholers were kind of the example of the small community that pulled together to make sure that they have representation on the CSM. I remember in Faction Warfare we kind of looked at that and tried to figure out how to, because we wanted to have a Faction Warfare candidate in the same way. But yeah, there was a pretty noteworthy betrayal in 2016, I think. And I don't think the wormhole community has recovered since. And I've asked them about that because ultimately they are going to have to pull together and feel like they have good representation with who they get.
People gave Brisk a lot of crap for saying the same thing that I just said, which is that, if they don't have a candidate, they can talk to me. And I mean, I feel the same way as Brisk, and when I heard people were losing their minds over that, and pulling Brisk into this, like, call it a debacle or a furor of crazy accusations about his intentions and him being sort of the fake wormhole candidate. Is like, he's not a wormholer, he can't represent us. I hear that stuff and I'm like, wow, that's a lot of people getting really angry over something that really was a passing comment. And that's one of the things about this game, is that everybody is so passionate and so dedicated that sometimes the biggest thing getting in our way is ourselves.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of talented people within the community and within CCP, but also, it is also a highly competitive game. So there's always there's an edge to everything. And there are people that are undermining other people, and there are agendas playing out through all these things as well. And being able to sift through all of that is really important, as a wormholer, you can't just be pressured into following the line because you need to pull together to have a wormhole candidate if that wormhole candidate isn't going to actually represent your side of the equation. Like, it's a challenging thing, but I would say that that's the reason why I really like the voting system that we use, because you can rank your guys, and when either your top choice becomes eliminated or voted in, if your vote was not used, then it just moves on to your second vote. So things can play out over time. But I think that that's my time. You have 10 minutes in case I've missed anything or anything that you want to drill in on.
So I'm going to do a little bit what I did with DTM, and I'm going to say for the next 10 minutes, and 10 minutes is a good warning because I do have to cook dinner tonight, but I want the community and the people watching and stream, and I would love for you to hit me with what you think are your hardest questions. Like, call it a lightning round.
A lightning round. Okay. What do you spend the most time doing in Evil 9?
Lately, helping with fleets in ways that don't involve me being in the fleet, mostly because I've been really busy with work lately. But for example, I just stood up my own personal first Astro House because of the need for Moongo.
What do you
Or
think?
sorry, Athenor.
Athenor. Oh, got it. What do you think of the industrial changes?
It's a love-hate relationship. I kind of feel about the changes the same way I feel about Ford F-150s. I would never drive one, but I can recognize their utility.
What are your feelings about the ESS changes?
I think these are good. I think that they need, I don't know, they need like a giant Las Vegas neon sign around them so people engage with it more.
What is the point of Titans?
Aspirational endgame goal.
What do we do with all of the Titans?
Uh, put them all in a grudge match and let them slug it out until there's only a few left.
How's it going?
With the destruction of Titans, well, these industry changes are certainly seeing the non-replacement of them.
That's true. I think he was asking more broadly, but okay. Let's see. What do you think about the gate event coming up soon?
I'm excited. Everybody thought it was an April Fool's joke because they released it on April 1st, and everybody's like, haha, making a low set gate to stain. That sounds great. And then they're like, wait, it's not a joke.
Yeah, it's been kind of bizarre ever since. Okay.
Okay. Methostem the Immortal, or Methost the Mortal, said Titans were super duper win buttons. I think that insta-locking hot Titans should never have been able to be a possible thing.
It is the quickfire round questions time for Jurius Doctor. So if you have any questions for Jurius Doctor, CSM 16 candidate, please post it in chat now. All right, so let's see. Niarja, the fall of Niarja. What's your feelings about that?
I love that it interrupted the gate path between Jita and Amar and changed it to 46 jumps because it actually, in a lot of ways, encourages the regreening of some of the other markets like Heck and Dodixie, and also makes locations like Stackmon more appealing to increased seating.
What is the end game of EVE Online?
42.
Uh, do you believe that the upcoming shooter will be direct influence to EVE Online as a game in more ways than you would interplay between Dust, like with Dust 514?
I loved the interaction between Dust 514 and Eve. I think the Eve client lacked some of the code that it needed to make that feature more engaging for Eve players. It was great from the Dust side. I played a lot of Dust on my PlayStation 3. On the Eve player side, it was pretty boring. Orbit a planet, make sure you have the right modules fit, and use them when you get a notification. That's not fun. That's not engaging gameplay.
How would you change the Orca?
Cut its EHP in half.
When do you think that they'll add more Triglavian ships and or tier 7 filaments?
When Poshfen becomes a more active environment, and when they figure out a way to make Triglavian structures that can be anchored in Poshfen, because you can't anchor outpost structures in Poshfen.
Should they expand character creation beyond just adding cat ears?
Yes, but they should not go the cyberpunk route of having multiple choices of genitalia.
All right. Trig Titan or Mothership?
Ooh, I actually would prefer to have Jove ships come into the game. I would love to see the Jove return as a faction.
All right. Favorite pirate faction?
Okay, so there's this lore thing where it's very ambiguous whether or not this SOE are actually good guys or bad guys, and I want more investigation of the Sisters of Eve, and I want more Sisters of Eve ships.
Awesome. All right. Should they bring back walking in stations? And why should it be called casinos and stations?
No, absolutely no. I'd love for them to bring the commander's deck back so I can stand in station and look at my ships being all pretty with my character standing in front of it. That's cool, but that's all I really wanted.
Is a hot dog a sandwich? It's a taco. Is a taco a sandwich?
Yes, so is Bao. And Bao is amazing.
Fair enough. I mean, I think you've got my vote.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, it has been good having you. You do have a couple more minutes, but in case there's something else. But otherwise,
One thing I will say is, and I will say this without reservation, there are two people who will every year I create a video saying these are the people that I think that should be on this CSM. And last year I had to run two sets of recommendations because there was a lot of polarizing choices, and it was a really big field of really awesome candidates. I won't cast any aspersions about this year's running candidates, but I will say that I have one list, and other than myself, right at the top, there are two other people I would love to see you vote for. Actually, three. Brisk, for one. Not that I think that he needs the help getting in, but he's definitely valuable where he is. Maldavius, because he is a game developer and he's very good, and he lives in Poshvin and he understands the needs of that unique and new region. And Mike Azarai. Honestly, I think that the term limit thing should be lifted for Mike Azarai because he does so much good for this game and for new players. And I think if you ever find yourself in the position that you have, ISK to burn, or you're cleaning up your assets from round space and you're tired of looking at a really long assets list when you press Alt T, donate everything you can to Magic School Bus because it helps new players and it helps retention, and he does God's work. Like, the man is doing Bob's work. Help Mike Azariah. Whenever you feel like doing something charitable, donate to either Magic School Bus or Broadcast for Reps. Thank you. I am Jurius Doctor and have been your guest.
Awesome. Thanks for being here, rather.